In case you are new to my channel, I just want to let you know that I love survival horror games. A year ago I bought a game from MCM Comic Con London called White Day, with little to no information. The game was being sold at budget price for £25, which roughly translates to $30. I bought the game and completely forgot about it. It was buried under the ever-growing collection of games that sit there waiting to be played. Well, a year later, and after spending a good solid time with the game, I think I'm ready to share with you my honest opinions about White Day, a Labyrinth Named School on the PS4. Developed by Suneil, White Day was originally released on PC back in 2001. Fast forward to 2015, the game was remade for the mobile platforms and was released under the title of The School White Day. In 2017, the game was released on PC and PS4. The game follows the story of Hee-min Lee, who has a crush on a fellow student named So Young. Lee sneaks into his school after hours to drop some presents off for his crush, where he meets other two characters, Song-ga and Ji-shan.
Oh my, you totally startled me just then.
While running an errand for Song-ga, Lee comes across the janitor who has probably seen The Walking Dead way too much and likes to beat kids up who dare to trespass after hours.
I'm just getting started.
As the story goes on, you will get to learn more about the school, the characters, and the ghosts that haunt the premises. Let's start with the story of the game. If you love Asian horror movies like The Ring, Shudder, or Asian TV series like 13 Terrors, you will feel right at home. There are plenty of jump scares in the game that will shake you to your core. But for some reason, I really seem to enjoy the storyline because I didn't think I would. For a budget title, the game offered more than I was expecting. When I started my first playthrough, the characters really felt one-dimensional because they seemed to be ripped off from classic teenage horror movies. You have one snotty brat chick, the nerdy chick, and the one chick everyone falls for. They have distinct personalities, but they all are one-dimensional. That's probably because the only time you see these characters is during cutscenes or some very short sections of gameplay where you have to walk somewhere with them. But even after that, I seem to enjoy the interactions with the main character who is experiencing all these paranormal events. They offer enough insight as to what is going on and where the story is probably heading, all the while telling you what you need to do in their own distinct manner.
Definitely have what it takes to help me.
Which brings me to the game's biggest strengths, at least for me anyway. One of my all-time favorite survival horror games is Silent Hill 2. If you don't know, Silent Hill 2 had multiple endings determined by your actions, but no matter what you did, you always went down the same path. The game played exactly the same except for some minor changes near the end. White Day does it differently. The game also has multiple endings, and throughout the game you will be presented with different options that can affect your likability with the ladies you encounter in the game. Some choices are basic, like they will ask you a question and your response could be rude or flirty.
Why? Worried I want something weird?
but sometimes you will have to make a choice that will change the entire course of the game, and you will end up interacting with a completely different person.
Did you hear something just now?
What are you doing in here? Tell me, what happened earlier?
Did you hear something just now? You heard that, right? It was like a woman crying.
Of course, that one choice will lead to more interactions with that character and so on. White Day's approach to storytelling reminded me of Telltale's The Walking Dead, but that played more like an interactive movie rather than a game. And yes, I know, in The Walking Dead you ended up with different characters depending on your choices, but always came to the same end. White Day plays differently. For example, if you run after the Snotty Brat song she will fill you in about a certain character's backstory. However, if you choose the other option, you will see the other character's perspective and completely lose out what Songa had to say. That one choice changed the story. It not only adds to the replayability factor of the game, but it also ties in well with the narrative because you get to see both perspectives. Which brings me to our main character, Heeman Lee, our voiceless protagonist who is practically a blank state. He doesn't have any dialogues to speak in the entire game, which is fine. The story unfolds through his eyes, and you get to choose how he responds to certain situations that would determine the outcome of the game. From what I can tell, there are 8 possible endings, of which I managed to unlock 2. One was pretty wholesome. The other ending, well, was not that wholesome. But more than the story of these characters, I really enjoyed finding more about the school and the various ghosts that haunted the buildings. Each ghost has a backstory, and the way to unlock them, you need to collect their ghost story by exploring the buildings and witness a haunting from that ghost. I have to give props to the developers here because as scary as those hauntings were on their own, their backstories were even more terrifying. It's a nice way to give some depth to the ghosts in the game rather than making them exist for the sake of it, and they also tie in well with the overall story. Now let's talk about the gameplay because this is where I have most of my issues. The game is played in first person and it's predominantly a stealth game. When you are not interacting with the characters, you're trying to find a way out of a specific building. Let me break this down for you. There are 3 buildings in the game: Main Building 1, Main Building 2, and the new building. You go to the auditorium at the end as well, but it's not as open as the other 3 buildings, so I will not focus on that, considering much of the gameplay happens in the first 3 buildings. Anyways, you start off in the main building 1 and realize there is a special kind of lock that requires an elemental key. To progress to the next part, you need to explore the building you are in while avoiding the patrolling Negan wannabe janitor. On paper, the gameplay may have looked alright. I mean, many games have done it in the past and nailed it. Outlast is a prime example where you have to hide from the enemies to progress to the next area. Unfortunately, White Day fails pretty hard in that department. To explain this properly, I'm going to have to use Outlast as an example. There are sections in the game where you have to hide from enemies and find your way out. Once you have made your way to the next area, you feel a sense of relief. Even if the next section has the same kind of threat, it still changed the scenery a bit and it gave a sense of progression. With White Day, there is so much backtracking in those buildings that I never got any satisfaction of making any progress. You could spend anywhere between 2 to 3 hours in each building just wandering around the halls trying to find the next piece of the puzzle. You see, there are puzzles in this game that require you to explore these buildings, but you cannot explore them properly because the annoying janitor is always patrolling around. You can avoid him by hiding in classrooms or the toilet stalls, but if he spots you, and trust me, he will run after you like you owe him money and now he wants your kneecaps in return. Like I said, it may have looked good on paper, but when you have to solve puzzles that force you to explore the map while avoiding a janitor who is patrolling tight, narrow corridors of the school, it will become taxing and you will feel the fatigue of sneaking around all the time. Yes, you could cheese the hell out of it by running past him and occasionally taking a few cheap hits, but I still found it annoying because that meant he was constantly chasing me. Also, this technique may work on normal difficulty setting, but on hard or hell difficulty, it will get you killed pretty quickly. Another thing that I found quite annoying about the game was that the puzzles are object dependent. Let me tell you what I mean by that. For example, in your first playthrough, you need to unlock a locker on the first floor. You look around and pick a memo on the second floor that says that the combination of that lock is hidden in a toolbox that you remembered seeing on the first floor. You make your way to the toolbox while avoiding the annoying janitor. You look inside and after finding a toolkit that reveals the code when examined, and voila, you can unlock that locker. On the second playthrough, you know you can find the code from the toolbox, so you rush there, but you cannot pick up the toolkit until you pick the memo from the second floor. It just prolongs the game unnecessarily and you are forced to put up with the patrolling janitor. It doesn't really help either that running will alert the janitor of your presence, even if you are one floor above him. While it would make sense because sound travels, but for me it added a bit more to my frustration. I wanted to attempt the game again for the third time, but I did not have the energy to do it. I didn't want to put up with it anymore. Which is a shame really because everything else about the game is rather decent, at least for a budget game. It's not groundbreaking, but it works. The music is creepy and haunting. I mean, just hear the main menu and you will see what I'm talking about. The sound effects are good too. You will hear random banging on the windows, glass breaking, and whispering sounds at random locations in the game. The ambience is pretty good in the game too. Developed in Unity, all the lighting in the game, from what I could tell, looked pre-baked. Here's what I mean by it. Dynamic lighting causes real-time shadows that generate and depend on player movement. They cast realistic shadows, however, they put a lot of stress on the engine as it needs to calculate the shadow size, depth, and so on. Pre-baked lighting means that all the lighting and shadows are calculated from the start, so it does not generate any new shadows regardless of the player's actions. This would make the game look a bit dull when the environment is well lit, but it also means that it is less taxing on the engine itself, so the performance does not dip. It would explain why White Day ran at 60 frames per second. At no point I saw any kind of frame rate drop, but then again there isn't much there to load in the first place. You do get a lighter in the game that lets you see in the dark and casts a good illumination effect around you, but it doesn't spread that far. The character models look a bit dull, but they don't look that bad. For a budget game, they do the job. The voice acting is a bit of a hit and miss affair. The English voiceover is, okay, I guess?
Thank you. I knew that you'd help.
Now I know the English voiceover actresses tried their best to match the lip movement and the intensity in the scenes. That's because the game was made in Korean language. Luckily, the developers decided to include the original Korean dialogues in the game as well, which I think was a pretty good decision because it alters the entire experience.
Maybe the rumor's true. I mean, especially on a night like this. Boo! Did I scare you? I guess you don't like ghost stories, huh?
어쩌면 그 소문 진짜일지도 몰라. 오늘 같은 밤이면 놀랐어? 너 이런 얘기에 엄청 약한가 보다.
Switching to Korean dialogues meant near enough perfect lip sync. Now I know some people would prefer to play it with the original Korean voiceover because it feels more natural, while some would prefer the English voiceover because they don't want to read subtitles all the time. Whatever you want to go for, at least the option is available for you to access. Once again, for a budget game that seems to be ported straight from the mobile version, this really is a welcome bonus. The reason I think this is a port of a mobile version of the game because I noticed something odd about texture streaming techniques used in the game. It is something I have seen used in older mobile games because of the hardware limitations of older mobile phones, but it was strange to see it pop up on a console version of the game. The puzzles in White Day are challenging and fun to solve, aside from that one chalkboard puzzle which had me look on the net because I could not solve it for the life of me. Apparently it is damn near impossible to solve if you don't know Japanese, Korean or Chinese. Aside from that one puzzle, I think the rest are okay. But there are loads of secrets in the game to find out which you won't be able to because of the bloody janitor. I seriously wish the developers included an option which removed the janitor completely so people like me could explore the school, find its secrets and just enjoy the story. And honestly, I don't think the game needed the janitor to begin with. White Day has timed trials where you need to solve a puzzle before time runs out, and if it does, it will result in game over. I genuinely like those missions. I think there are 3 of them, 1 in each building. My point is, when these time trials start, the janitor is completely removed for the duration of the trial. In the second trial, there's literally a giant baby that will destroy the school if you don't complete the trial. You'd think of all the people, the janitor would be the first one to check what the heck is going on. But nope, the janitor was nowhere to be seen. Which makes me wonder if the developers could have done away completely with the janitors and included some more of these time trials. Full disclaimer, I played the game on normal difficulty, so I don't know if the janitor appears on harder difficulty settings during these time trials. Now you might be thinking I'm being extra hard on the janitor aspect of gameplay. The reason I'm being like this is because there are some decent gameplay ideas at work here. For example, one of the ghost stories I collected was about a mermaid. I'm not going to go into details, but it's a ghost of a woman whose body was fed to a fish. The result is this mermaid-like creature that haunts the pool. Since you need to get across, you need to find these L-shaped rods that guide you. While you are walking on the surface of the water, you need to avoid the mermaid's path or you will be attacked by her. It's this kind of variety that I think would have really benefited the game. After all, there are 20 ghost stories in total. I don't see why 2 janitors, yes, there are 2 of them, were the only ever-present threat throughout the game. In my opinion, they should have done away with the janitors entirely. Another thing I want to touch upon here, and it could be just me being picky, but I don't appreciate letterboxing in cutscenes. I know it's a technique game developers use to visually represent that you are now watching a cutscene so you can relax for a bit, but it kind of ruins the immersion for me.
Oh, that was close. If you sneak in at night, the janitor gets terribly angry.
Speaking of immersion, there are some quick time events as well in the game, but thankfully they are few and far in between. There's plenty of time for you to react, and it usually involves moving the left thumbstick in a certain direction. The game does have an inventory system as well. Your health does not auto-regenerate and you need to consume items like soy milk, lunchboxes, and tranquilizers to restore your health and stamina. You can save your progress by using a felt tip pen, which is White Day's version of ink ribbons from Resident Evil. There are plenty of unlockables on offer here, and they can be achieved by getting certain endings, completing your ghosts collection, and so on. I was surprised to find out that there is downloadable content for this game. You can download additional outfit packs for your characters, and yes, one of those outfit packs has bikinis for the ladies in the game. So there is some fan service for your pleasure. Overall, I think White Day is okay. The game does have a pretty good storyline and there are some interesting gameplay mechanics at work here, but the hide and seek gameplay tired me out very quickly. Even though I wanted to play the game again to get the other endings, I could not put myself through it. But then again, this is a budget title that seemed to deliver a compelling story with some genuinely good scares. I wish it could have been better. I wish the gameplay was more focused on exploration rather than stealth, because if it was, it would have been more fun. Would I recommend this game? For the story? Definitely. For the gameplay? Probably not. So if you're looking for a decent first-person survivor horror game, I would recommend you check out Outlast or Amnesia. Outlast 2 is okay as well, but not as good as the first one. I'll probably make a video on them if I have the time, but I got other games to play as well. Thanks a lot guys for checking this video out. I hope you liked it. Let me know in the comment box below what you all think and want me to play next. I'm a part-time YouTuber who happens to be a gamer, so your engagement with the channel will really help me a lot. Peace out people and stay awesome.